So in the last video, we talked about the basic assumptions of the Drude model. So let's start applying it. And the first situation we're going to consider is the DC electrical conduction in a metal. And all of us would be aware of the Ohm's law, V equal to IR. So this just means that if you try to pass a current I through a metal, then there is always a voltage drop across the ends of the metal through which the currents are flowing. And this voltage and the current are related in terms of some number which is R. The only issue with the resistance is that it's strongly dependent on the shape and the size of the material. So instead of defining the Ohm's law as V equal to IR, we can redefine it as the proportionality constant between the electric field and the current density J. So that proportionality constant is called the resistivity rho. The current density J is of course the current per unit area, and the voltage, as we know from our electromagnetism course, is simply for a length L. The voltage is simply the electric field times L. So I can rewrite the E equal to rho J in terms of the Ohm's law, and I will now be able to equate the R to rho. So basically now you have the resistivity connected to the resistance R, and you have the length of the material and the area of cross section coming in. Now if I define small n as the number of electrons per unit volume with a velocity v, we can calculate the number of electrons that cross an area A in time dt as NA times V dt. V dt is of course the length, and the total charge crossing would be minus E times the number of electrons crossing that area A in time dt. I want to point out that whenever we talk about electrons and the charge comes in the equation, we will write minus E. That will be the convention. So we won't write just Q, we will write it explicitly as minus E. If we write it as Q, in situations if we write it in general as Q, then it means that it could either be an electron or a hole. We don't know the charge. But if we know the charge and we want to explicitly write down the sign, we put it as minus E. So I can now write the current in terms simply as that, and I can now write a nice expression for the current density J as minus NE times V. But this V is actually the average V, because it can't just be the V for one electron, it's the V for the entire collection of electrons in the solid. So if we want to find out what this V average is, so after any collision, there will be some intrinsic velocity for the electron that's present even in the absence of an external electric field. That's your V naught. And then because of the electric field, there is a force minus small e times capital E, and then you can write that in terms of a velocity like that. And if I take the average, this V naught will go to 0 because the V naught will be in random directions. It'll it'll cancel off. The time average will be basically 0. And if I so the essential term that sits in the average V average would be minus E capital vector E times divided by M. Then there's a tau. So that tau is the relaxation time, and that's of course essentially a definition, right? So now if I put that inside the expression for J, I now have J equal to NE squared tau by M, and that NE squared tau by M is called the conductivity, which is simply the inverse of the resistivity. And immediately you can see that the conductivity goes as E squared. So whether you have positive charges flowing or negative charges flowing, the conductivity is not sensitive to that. So if I measure conductivity, I won't be able to tell what is the nature of charge carriers in a metal. And of course I can do a experiment straightforward and calculate the resistivity, and from the resistivity I can go on and calculate the relaxation time. You can see table 1.2 in Ashcroft and Mermin for resistivity data. So if I now go on to calculate the relaxation time, that's about 10 power minus 14 to 10 power minus 15 seconds. Then I can define a mean free path L as the V average times the tau. Now you must have studied something called the equipartition theorem. Perhaps in school, some of you must have done it in PSC. In any case, since the statistical physics course is running parallel to this course, you will be deriving the equipartition theorem in full proper detail, and you will be able to show that the average kinetic energy half m v squared, where v is the average velocity v average, is essentially equal to the temperature of the system. And this is of course is the main result of the kinetic theory of gases. You may have derived that some time back. So at least the MSc students may have done it, I think, if not the dual degree students or others. This is of course something that you will derive in stat phi also, so I'm not going to get into that. So this this V average can be immediately found out from the temperature. So if everything else is known, from the temperature, if I fix the temperature at room temperature, then the V average would be about 10 power 7 centimeters per second, and corresponding to this, the relaxation time would be 1 to 10 angstroms. Now if I take a solid, and if I am working in a model where the resistance for the flow of electrons comes because of the electrons colliding with ions, I know that the solid has got a regular collection of these ions. We will talk about that in great detail in the future classes. That's called a lattice, and the lattice spacing, the typical spacing between the ions is about 1 to 10 angstroms, roughly of that order. So this looks like a great victory for the Drude model, because you have just used Newton's laws, and you have if you're wondering where you have used Newton's laws, go back to the video and see where we have done that, or in any case we'll be talking about that in more detail. So we have used Newton's laws, or a very simple classical idea, basically treating the electrons as a gas, and we have come up with a mean free path that is comparable to the actual mean free path that is found for ions in a lattice. So is it a success? Unfortunately, no. The problem is that the resistance of a material is not a constant. If I cool down the material, or I should say resistivity, the resistivity is not a constant. If I cool down the material, the resistivity starts decreasing very rapidly, and it would go all the way down to 0 at t equal to 0. But what happens is, in a material, in any kind of material, there will always be some defects, and because of these defects, there will be the electrons would scatter from these defects, and that will create a resistivity. So that defect component dominates at very low temperatures, but the resistivity keeps dropping dramatically, and at low temperatures you can have very, very large mean free paths, about 1000 angstroms, or 10 power 5, 10 power 7, or 10 power 8 angstroms is possible. Now this is bizarre, right? You have a model where you are saying the electrons are getting scattered from the ions, and the ions are spaced every 10 angstroms or so. That means every 10 angstroms the electrons should suffer a collision. But at low temperatures, the electrons can travel freely, almost freely, over the entire length of the solid, over 1000 angstroms, 10,000 angstroms, or even more, without a collision. And that's just crazy. How is that possible? This is something that we will be dealing with in later chapters when we talk about the band theory of solids. So already we have now hit a stumbling block. The Drude model fails terribly. Now the reason for this, as we shall find out in later classes, is because, if you look at the expression for the conductivity as derived from the Drude model, the conductivity depends on the relaxation time. It turns out any property that any physical property that depends on the relaxation time, if you use a classical approach, you will get very wrong results. But there are several properties, as we shall be seeing from this video on. There are several properties which do not depend on the relaxation time. So if you try to calculate the Drude model, calculate those properties using the Drude model, you get a much better answer, at least in some region. So that's the general thumb rule. If the property depends on the relaxation time, you cannot use the classical approach. If it does not depend on the relaxation time, then you can get away with using the classical approach. And the reason for that is just a happy coincidence. Just by coincidence, it so turns out that the relaxation time gets cancelled off in the derivation of that quantity, and therefore quantum effects also they don't manifest explicitly in both the in the math as well as in the experiment. But that's just a coincidence, that's all. So the next step would be to try and look at some properties that do not depend on the relaxation time explicitly. The first will be the Hall effect, but for that we need to quickly derive an equation of motion for the electrons. So the first step would be to write the current density in terms of the momentum P of t, like that, and we ask what is the momentum at a time t plus dt. So the probability of a collision occurring within a time dt is about dt by tau, as a fraction dt by tau. So if I use that as a probability, then the probability of no collision happening within the time dt is 1 minus dt by tau. So I can simply write the momentum P of t plus dt is equal to the fraction of electrons which do not suffer a collision within the time dt. That's why I'm having this the probability here. So the fraction of electrons that do not suffer a collision within the time dt, and I can write the momentum for that fraction as the initial momentum plus an additional momentum that the electron picks up in the time dt, and that's because of some force. So I can write the additional momentum as the force times dt, and that's the additional momentum that gets picked up. Of course, there can be higher order terms, and if you look at Ashcroft, he will show you that there are higher order terms of the dt squared of order, and he will explain why there will only be higher order terms, just one more order terms, that is dt squared of the order dt squared terms, why that happens. But for the moment, let us not confuse ourselves with that. We will just assume there can be higher order terms in dt, and anyway I am going to neglect those higher orders. So given this, I can now rewrite it in this fashion, and I can divide this equation by dt on both sides and take the limit dt tends to 0. That will give me the rate at which the momentum changes, and that can nicely be written as the rate at which the momentum changes, which is equal to the force, which is of course the first term, and there is an additional term minus p of t by tau. So if you look at our usual expressions for harmonic oscillators and so on, so this looks like a damping term. So you have some kind of damping that happens within that relaxation time. So that we shall use this simple expression for the as an equation of motion for electrons in the Drude model. We are going to neglect higher order terms and keep it simple. So we will just use this expression in the when we look at the Hall effect and other properties. So the Hall effect is something I hope you may have studied in school. I'm sure definitely the MSCs would have done this in BSc, but in general, or very quick introduction is that you have a slab of a conductor, and you are trying to pass a current in the x direction. So you have an electric field Ex that results in a current density Jx, and you are applying a magnetic field H along the z-axis, positive z-axis, and because of that, and assuming that there are electrons that are moving, then there is a Lorentz force which pushes the electrons in the negative y direction, and the electrons will start accumulating on one side of the slab. Because the electron starts accumulating there, they will repel the further accumulation of electrons. Because you have an accumulation of negative charge, that negative charge will start repelling the further accumulation, and therefore you will have some kind of steady state, and there will be no further movement of charge along the negative y direction, but there will be a potential difference because of the charge densities will differ from this end to the other end. There will be a potential difference, which means that there is an electric field along the EY direction. So you can measure this voltage or electric field immediately, and that's called the Hall voltage. So very generally, we have this current which is initially flowing in the x direction, and that results in a current. There's an electric field in the x direction, and that results in a current density in the x direction. And we can write Ex as rho times J. And the most general way to assume is to assume that this resistivity will be field dependent. But under normal circumstances, for many materials, the normal resistivity that you measure is not dependent on the field. So it's typically field independent. But very low temperatures, very high magnetic fields, resistivity will start changing with magnetic field. That's called magnetoresistance. Of course, there are many materials the magnetoresistance will change even at room temperature, but I am talking about simple elemental metals. For simple elemental metals, typically rho of h is not, rho of h is just rho. There's no field dependence. But the Drude model does not work for every metal, because there can be some field dependence. Then if you consider the electric field along the y direction, which is the built up electric field, the electric field here, we can simply say that this electric field Ey will depend on the applied magnetic field. Higher the applied magnetic field, higher will be the Ey. And then we can also assume that higher the current that's flowing, higher will be the charge buildup. So the higher will be Ey. So Ey is directly proportional to Jx and h, and the proportionality constant is called Rh, which is the Hall constant. This Hall constant is technically it is supposed to be negative for if the electrons are the charge carriers. It is supposed to be positive for if holes are the charge carriers. But what happens is, even in metals where you must have studied semiconductors only have holes and so on, but it turns out that in many metals, the most common is aluminum. Even in very common metals, you can show that holes are the charge carriers and not electrons, and that is something that you cannot explain without using band theory. We will try and do that in later classes. So now we start with the equation of motion that we just derived, and we write that down. And the force is simply the standard force, the electric field operating on the electron, and the Lorentz force V cross H on the operating on minus E. And then I insert that and I get this. And now I define a condition where the current is constant in time. So we assume steady state conditions. So we assume that there is no further change in momentum. So dB by dt is set to 0. And if I do that, I can now write two equations, one for Ex and one for Ey. So I can write first the Ex term, and we have a Px term, and you have the opposite because of the nature of the Lorentz force. You have a Py here, and you can write it for Ey. You have a Py by tau, and this will be Px. There's a simple expression you can simply straight away write down from the cross product. So, and this is under steady state. Now, given this nature of equations, we can now define EH by m as omega c. For those of you who are familiar with what is a cyclotron, or the way in which electrons move under a magnetic field, you will know that this is just the cyclotron frequency, but we will not explicitly talk about this here. So we'll just call this omega c, and I can introduce the conductivity into the expression, into these expressions, and I can rewrite these expressions as this. You can show that immediately. And one standard instruction is, when you have math, I cannot be reading out the math sigma naught ex equal to omega c tau jy and so on. That's just silly. Please pause the video, take your notebook and write down immediately and see how these two expressions can be written in this form. It's a very simple way to do it, but that's something that you have to do, and I cannot be guiding everything along the way, and I can't be reading out math. So you now have these two expressions to work with. But if you go back to this schematic that we had, we just explained that because the buildup of electrons will repel the further movement of charge, there is no current along the negative y direction. So jy will be 0. So if I set jy to 0, I can immediately write this equation which connects Ey to Jx, and so I now have Ey is minus h by Ne times Jx. But we earlier wrote Ey as proportional to Jx and h, and the proportionality constant we called as the Rh, or the Hall constant. So I now have an expression for the Hall constant. If I look at this, so Rh is now minus 1 by Ne. So now this means that if I have electrons, the Hall constant will be negative. If I have holes, the Hall constant will be positive. That's the of course the simple idea. But where those electrons are, we don't know. We cannot assume that because it's a metal, you will only have electrons, because there are many metals, because of their nature of the band structure, they have hole-like conduction. But the problem is that this Hall constant is not a constant, unfortunately. When I look at Rh equal to 1 by Ne, minus 1 by Ne, the first thing I notice is that there is no relaxation time. The relaxation time has dropped out. It has cancelled off because there's a tau by sigma that goes away, and which means that I expect this Hall constant to comply with the Drude model. The experiment should comply with the Drude model. That doesn't happen. The Hall constant is not really a constant. The Hall, so we call it the Hall coefficient. We changed it to the Hall coefficient. The Hall coefficient is dependent on temperature. It is also dependent on the magnetic fields, and in fact the magnetic field can change the sign of the Hall coefficient as well, so that's also possible. So you cannot say that the Drude result works here very well. So it doesn't comply with it at low temperatures and high at normal temperatures, let me say that again. The Drude result of minus 1 by Ne does not work very well at normal temperatures. You get one answer at one temperature, let's say 300 Kelvin. If you drop down the temperature by about 50 Kelvin or increase the temperature by another 50 Kelvin, the Hall coefficient will change. It also varies strongly with magnetic field. Only at very low temperatures, only at very high magnetic fields, and only for very pure samples, the Hall coefficient tends to saturate, and it tends to behave like a constant, and it matches the Drude result only at those conditions. So it's really not a victory for the Drude result again. So this is an example from Ashcroft and Mermin. This is for aluminum. You can see that the Hall coefficient changes sign there, and then it goes negative, and then it saturates at very high magnetic fields. And this is the Hall coefficient for different materials close to room temperature, I would think. So you can see that the beryllium, magnesium, indium, aluminum, all of them have negative Hall coefficients. Finally, these two expressions that we derived, you can see here that because of this omega c, there is a Ex is not proportional to Jx. Ex does not scale with Jx. Ey does not scale with Jy. And you can think of omega c as a measure of the magnetic field. That is, if omega c is very small, that means that before the electron completes one orbit, because it will move in a helical path, before it completes one orbit, it will get, there will be a collision, it will suffer a collision. But when omega c is very large, that means the magnetic field is very large, then it can actually travel a few revolutions before it encounters a collision. And also the E and J are not proportional. Because of this factor omega c tau, and you can think of the vector E and vector J having an angle, and that angle can be this is called the you can think of it as some angle phi, and you can show that tan phi is omega c tau. I mean that that math is not immediately relevant for us now. We will talk about it when it's relevant. So the essential thing I want to say is omega c tau is some quantity that is a measure of the magnetic field, strength of the magnetic field. If it is small, then Ex is proportional to Jx, Ey is proportional to Jy. If it is the electron will get, it cannot move freely because the collisions will overtake the impact of the magnetic field. If omega c tau is large, then the magnetic field is much larger than the effect of collisions. We'll continue in the next class.